Welcome to the Orchid Advisors Compliance Training Series, Form 4473. A firearm transaction record is more commonly known as Form 4473. A licensed seller must complete this form when they sell or transfer a firearm to an unlicensed individual. However, if a person purchases a firearm from a private individual who is not a licensed dealer, the buyer is not required in most states to complete a Form 4473, though some states require individual sellers to sell through dealers. It is recommended that you familiarize yourself with federal, state, and local requirements. You may order the forms free of charge from the ATF Distribution Center. It is recommended that you order a 6-month supply. The ATF Form 4473 is designed to help eliminate errors in completing Form 4473 for both the firearm purchaser and the FFL holding seller. The Form 4473 is provided free of charge via the ATF Form website. ATF Form 4473 is a downloadable application that runs locally on the FFL's computer and supports both Windows and Mac operating systems. As a side note, the ATF periodically updates the Form 4473 in response to changes in laws. It is important that you use the most recent version of Form 4473. Failure to do so is a technical violation of the ATF rules and regulations. A big part of being a fully compliant FFL holder is by staying abreast of current trends and avoiding simple mistakes, such as using an outdated 4473 form. Different portions of Form 4473 must be completed and signed by the buyer and seller. Section A must be completed and signed by the buyer prior to transfer. Sections B and D must be completed by the seller, by the person who verified the buyer's photo ID. If the transfer takes place on a date other than the date the buyer signed Section A, then Section C must be completed. Information required on the 4473 includes the following: buyer's name, address, and date of birth. Confirmation that the seller examined the buyer's government-issued photo ID that shows a current residence. Transaction number provided as a result of the seller's National Instant Criminal Background Check System, NICS, background check. Make, model, and serial number of the firearm. A short federal affidavit stating that the buyer is eligible to purchase firearms under federal law.
Lying on this form is a felony and can be punished by prison and/or fines, even if the transaction is simply denied by the NICS.
Form 4473 is essentially a way for the ATF to hold a buyer accountable if they misrepresent their status and are disqualified from purchasing a firearm. Corrections may be made to the E-form, but the method depends on whether or not the firearm transfer has taken place. If the error was noted prior to transfer, you should mark through the error on the printed form, enter the corrected information, and initial and date each correction. If the error was noted after the transfer occurred, you should photocopy the inaccurate form and make the necessary additions or revisions to the photocopy. The seller should change only sections B and D, the buyer sections A and C, as applicable. The person who made the changes should initial and date the changes. The corrected photocopy should be attached to the original form. The ATF has designated the following individuals as being disqualified from possessing a firearm: persons who are or have been under indictment for a felony, where the punishment could have been imprisonment for a term of more than 1 year; a fugitive from justice; an unlawful drug user or drug addict; adjudicated mentally defective or involuntarily committed to a mental institution; dishonorably discharged from the military, subject to a restraining order involving their child, an intimate partner, or child of such partner, for example, domestic violence restraining order; convicted of a crime, renounced their U.S. citizenship; aliens illegally or unlawfully in the U.S. It is the responsibility of the buyer to answer truthfully when completing Form 4473. However, the result of the NICS background check either allows or prevents the seller from transferring the firearm. The NICS background check result must be received prior to the transfer. The result may be one of 4 responses: proceed, Seller may transfer immediately. Delayed. Seller must wait 3 days before transfer. Denied. Seller is prohibited from transferring firearm. Canceled. Seller cancels background check and is prohibited from transferring firearm. The dealer or retailer is obligated to record the transfer in their Book of Acquisition and Disposition, A&D book, aka bound book. The purpose of the book is to record all acquisitions, for example, purchases, returns, and repairs, or dispositions, sales, repairs, consignments. The A&D book may be kept electronically or manually. Regardless, the following fields are required:
Manufacturer, importer.
Model, serial number, type, caliber, disposed to date, disposed to name, disposed to Form 4473 number, disposed to address. The dealer or retailer has 7 days to record the transfer in the A&D book, but the disposition date must reflect the actual transfer date. Dealers or retailers are required to maintain completed forms for 20 years in the case of completed sales, and 5 years where the sale was denied as a result of the NICS check coming back disapproved or some other disqualifying information. This is summarized as follows. A&D record, 20 years. 4473, 20 years. Without transfer, 5 years. Completed 4473s may be filed in one of 3 manners: alphabetical order, by purchaser name, chronological order, disposition date, or chronological order, serial number. The ATF is allowed to inspect as well as request a copy of the Form 4473 from the dealer or retailer during the course of a criminal investigation. If you are acquiring a firearm for your personal collection, the determination for whether or not a 4473 is required is based on your organization's legal entity status. If the dealer is a sole proprietor, Form 4473 and an NICS background check are not required. If the dealer is other than a sole proprietor, for example, LLC, partnership, or corporation, Form 4473 and an NICS background check are required. A disposition must be recorded in the A&D book regardless of the type of entity. It is recommended that you consider the following with regards to improving your ability to remain compliant. An employee of the entity should be designated responsibility for maintaining Form 4473 files. All employees should be trained on the requirements for recording an entry in the A&D book. The procedures for completing and retaining 4473s should be documented, and, as applicable, a backup person should be familiar with the requirements. You should be receiving the ATF newsletter or alerts to advise you of the potential or enacted changes in regulations, reporting requirements, or forms.
Thank you for watching this segment of our video training series. Viewers are encouraged to seek professional advice prior to assessment, implementation, or execution.